Good evening, everybody. My name is Todd Scholl. I'm the lead learner at the SCEA, Center for Educator Wellness and Learning. We call ourselves Cool. You can be cool. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at Be Cool. Welcome to tonight's live stream. I'm so excited about tonight's live stream. Just a little bit of background knowledge. So back in 2013, I was doing some research on mindfulness in education, and I was searching and Googling for schools that were implementing mindfulness in their schools. And one of the schools that I came across was Blue Mountain School. It's a small school in rural Western Virginia, a town called Floyd. And I went and visited, and I was just fascinated by what I saw. I shot some interviews. I observed for 3 days. And what I saw was something really inspirational, something incredible. And I've brought that back home, and I've talked to people about it. And it's been a while, and I haven't had a chance to get back. But when I started this role and we started talking about creating the kind of schools that our teachers and their students deserve, I started thinking, well, we've got to give people some ideas of what that means. What are some options? What does it mean to help deliver schools that you deserve? What does that look like? And there's not necessarily one right answer to that. But I think there's some ideas that we can take a look at and consider as we develop the schools that you deserve. So that's why I'm going to bring on tonight's guest. Before we get started, I do want to remind everybody to go to lisa4sc.com if you are interested in supporting us. Like the SCEA has fully endorsed Lisa Ellis for State Superintendent of Education. If you would like to support her campaign, you can do that at lisa4sc.com. And we also have a really cool webpage called the scea.org/votes. We encourage everybody who's watching to get registered to vote. If you aren't already, make sure you vote. If you want to vote early, make plans to do that. But we have got to come together, get your brothers and sisters, your moms, your dads, your kids, if they're 18, your neighbors, to get out and vote for Lisa Ellis. It's so important that we do that. But without further ado, I'd like to get to our guests and bring them on. So welcome to Tammy Sarver, the Executive Director at Blue Mountain School, and Jenny Finn, who is the Executive Director at Springhouse Community School. Thank you both for your time tonight and for being a part of this. I'm looking so forward to learning from you.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, let's start. We'll start with Tammy and then go to Jenny. Maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself and sort of a brief overview of the school that you lead.
Okay. Well, I'm at Blue Mountain School, and as you know, Todd, but we're over 40 years old. We started back in when those first back-to-landers came to Floyd to settle here. Their children started to grow, and they grew a school. And that we were a homeschool co-op, parent-led homeschool co-op for several years. And then almost 15 years ago, the board, parents, and the visionary leader, Shelley, who was here before me, really grew the model that we have now. And I think a part of that is that we grow stronger every year, just like the children we're serving in the community we're serving, we continue to evolve and grow, and we really embrace that. I found my way here. You've known Blue Mountain School longer than I have, Todd, because you were here interviewing before I was here. And I found my way here about 7 years ago. When I was in college in the 80s learning to be a teacher, I was fortunate to have those really idealistic influences that made me not want to settle. And I'd always dreamed of a beautiful, small, progressive school where I could teach and continue to grow and teach the way I believe. And it was right down the road. And here I am. Nice. Glad to be here with you and with Jenny.
Thank you so much, Tammy. Jenny?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and Springhouse.
Sure. Yeah. So we're here in Floyd with Tammy and Blue Mountain School in the Blue Ridge Mountains, the beautiful Blue Ridge. And I moved here about 10 years ago, or a little over that, from Colorado with my family, live on a farm here. And it was then shortly after I moved here that myself and Ezekiel Fugit and Joe Klein started Springhouse together. And I'm still here. We're going into our 10th year, and we have a pretty mighty vision And that vision is to build regenerative, life-giving culture. So we're really about culture and community building through education. And regenerative culture meaning for us just that happens when people are connected to the gift, the precious gift of their life, and the relationship between people and with the earth. So it's a mighty vision. Unfortunately, we're, in our dominant culture, we're pretty far from that, which is why Blue Mountain School and why Springhouse are needed. And our mission is really to create and share a model of that culture, a framework, principles that we share with other people globally. So Springhouse is really one example of 5 principles that we practice, and then we share those with people who want to build healthy communities and culture through education, and not necessarily just with schools, but community leaders and educators who want to build culture using these 5 principles. And it's really inspiring to have an example of that. So not just a theoretical kind of framework, but an example. And finally, Springhouse it does offer a day school for teenagers, and then also programming for adults. One kind of avenue is focused on self-development and self-discovery for adults, and then the other is more about cultural design work. So we have a much longer program, a 2-year program where adults come, study the model, and then take it to where they are and practice it.
Let's talk a little bit about Floyd, because I want to talk about the Floyd community first, so that folks who are watching, there's probably a lot of people from South Carolina watching. A lot of times I ask, hey, people, have you ever heard of Floyd? And they're like, no, what are you talking about? And so, and then I try to describe Floyd, and it's very difficult. It's hard to describe for someone who hasn't been there. Talk a little bit about the culture of Floyd. Tammy kind of hinted at some of that, but a little bit about the culture of Floyd and how, for folks who don't understand, this is a small town. I think there's one stoplight in the middle of the town, maybe 2 now, 1.
Just one.
So it's a small one stoplight town. So for people in South Carolina who are living in a small community, understand this is not happening in New York City or San Francisco. This is one small town in the South. And so, but talk a little bit about what makes, I can tell you what I think is special about Floyd, but maybe you tell us what makes Floyd such a special place, and how the community culture informs what you do.
One of the things that really speaks to me about it is that, Blue Mountain School is pretty closely aligned with the Reggio Emilia approach. And a part of that is this idea that it's a unique place, it's unique circumstances, it's unique people that grow into a special thing. And I feel like that is really closely, that really describes Floyd. And in that, it's a really unique community. We're very rural. But there is such an inclusivity with each other and tolerance for new ideas. And so we were settled back. The community that grew my school was settled back in the 70s, where a lot of people were reaching back to the land and embracing those values that, that go along with our progressive education models. And those folk, settled into the area with respect, and so have continued to grow. And there's a huge artist community here. There's a great music scene. You should interrupt me, Jenny, and talk a little bit about it.
No, you go.
There's so much mindfulness
yes.
in our area that we get to take for granted. As I was talking about our school, I should have said we're a contemplative progressive school. We are founded in mindfulness and contemplative studies. And that's so much a part of the culture of our small community that I'm really grateful for that. It's almost something I hope I never take for granted, but we can feel really comfortable in,
Yeah. I was going to say, so when I went to Blue Mountain School, there was a poster in every room. It said, "I'm not a teacher, I'm an awakener." And when I saw that in every room, and the students are taking off their shoes and they're doing yoga at PE, and then I don't know if there was a gentleman there named Jagadish.
He's still here.
Who was teaching meditation classes, and they were doing Zen gardens and things like that. And it was just like, how is this happening? How is this happening here? I would expect that in some school in Berkeley or somewhere like that, but it was so strange to me to see the juxtaposition of a small sort of town in Blue Ridge Mountains and that, and I know that maybe it's a stereotype or whatever, but it was just fascinating, and I'm so excited. I just want that story to be told. I want people to know about it. Jenny, what are your thoughts about the Floyd community and culture?
Yeah, it's great. I just wrote I was spent this whole past weekend writing a pretty big grant, and part of it was writing about Floyd. So I'm coming off of that kind of thinking. There's a great article in the Washington Post. Maybe it was 4 years ago. It was on the front page, and it was a story about Floyd. And it had the Floyd Country Store on there. And our dear friends Heather and Dylan, who own the Floyd Country Store and take such good care of it. It's really a musical and cultural heritage kind of institution that really they're really interested in preserving Appalachian tradition. So like Tammy said, the artistry, also the music and food. I mean, food, there's several organic farms here, local farmers doing a lot of really great work. It's a mystery to me, Todd. I don't know. I never planned on leaving Colorado when this place kind of pulled me here. I didn't even ever think about Virginia or never even heard of this place. That's a time for another live stream, that story. But there are many people here in Floyd that could tell a very similar story. Like, I just kind of got pulled here, and here I am. And, people have all kinds of legends and stories about why that happens. But I will say the landscape here is deeply, deeply healing, and allows for the fertility, I think, that Tammy was talking about, for new ideas in ways that honestly are a mystery to me. But I can really feel it here. And it's not just through education, but other things. People are innovating in a lot of different ways that are for the common good. And, whether that's entrepreneurship, agriculture, and what a blessing. I mean, what a blessing. And I'll also just say that there's families that have been here for generations. So it's not just newcomers like us. I mean, there are people who have been here for centuries, their families. And that is also really interesting to me, where there's this deep tradition, and then there's also this newness and this creativity, and somehow it mixes well together and makes for a really creative place.
Yes. So quick little anecdote. I think it was the first or second night that I was there, and the staff at Blue Mountain, we went out to eat at I don't think it still exists, but Oddfellows was a restaurant that I think it used to be on Main Street there. So we went to Oddfellows and we're eating, and I look and people are coming in the door, and there's a puppeteer came in the door. There was somebody who was dressed and she had paint all over her, like silver paint and twigs in her hair. And there was other people dance and I said, what's going on? They're like, oh, it's talent show night at the restaurant. And there was just this sense of, and then this Friday night when you walk down the street and there's groups of people playing acoustic instruments on every corner, and then you've got at the general store there. I don't know the name of the store, but there's like
country store, the Floyd Country Store,
the bluegrass concerts that are going on. It's just, it's magical is the word. It is beautiful. It's a sense of community, of coming together, getting off your computer, getting off the TV, and coming in, having a sense of community. And it was so beautiful, and it was so inspiring. Where I live is, you've got a lot of these cookie cutter neighborhoods, and, people get together, but it's not a sense of everybody's going to come downtown and on a particular night, and there's going to be, this celebration of community. And so it was just beautiful. And also the idea that people seem to be free to be who they are without judgment. And I don't know if that was just me, but that was the sense that I got. And I want to talk to you about, get a little bit deeper into school culture. So you're aware that public schools right now are struggling with teacher recruitment, retention, and we also struggle with this overemphasis on standardized testing, which really warps the school culture. The schools are sort of forced to modify the school day and the curriculum around maximizing student achievement on those tests, which I think is detrimental and creates a misalignment with the humanity of the educators and the students in the building. Talk about how your model addresses some of the social issues that you see happening in society at large, and why that's an antidote to what I'm describing.
That's a big topic. I feel like it's really neat that Jenny and I are in this conversation together because we're addressing the early years. We start at age 2.5 and go to around middle school years, and then Jenny takes the adolescence all the way through adulthood, and it's like we're that foundation, and then she's that expansion. But we're still in those same missions and have the same callings of really supporting that authentic growth of both the students and the teachers, which I think is a big piece of what makes both of our schools really unique, is that we really have reflective teaching communities that really support one another, and also in that really celebrate, may not be the best word, but our own vulnerability, so that we as teachers can be vulnerable with each other. We can feel safe enough to then do that risk taking that's so important, that really allows the great teaching that comes from real inspiration when we're authentic to ourselves and acknowledging that authenticity of each teacher. And again, I kind of harken back to the idea in Reggio Emilia of the 100 languages, this idea that the child has 100 languages, so does the teacher. And so really allowing each teacher to grow in their own gifts and teach from there, I think creates an environment that really allows what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of teachers aren't feeling that right now. They feel kind of boxed in, and I think it causes a lot of stress, that just feeling as though the environment that they're going in doesn't allow for what you're talking about. Creates a lot of stress.
I think allowing our teachers to come together, supporting each other regularly. We have weekly staff meetings that a piece of that is about that sharing with each other, about that reflective time. And I think you have a similar structure, right, Jenny?
Yeah, so we have staff development is top priority for me. And so every single week, we have different business meetings and things, but every week for 2 hours, and the staff want this. The interesting thing is, even today we had this meeting, we call it staff depth, and it's 2 hours a week. And it really is time for relational building within ourselves, with each other, with something greater than ourselves through mindfulness, and all of that. So that's 2 hours a week. And then we have a peer mentoring structure where our staff support each other throughout the whole year and do a lot of personal development work together. The educational design, we don't really even call ourselves teachers. It's not something that it's just not, it's not because we're opposed to that at all, because I think we all teach each other and we all learn. It just didn't evolve in that way. Our community, it really is a community of adults and young people learning and living together. And then there's a thread of mentorship that doesn't just come from the adult to the young person, but also from our older teens to our younger teens. And they feel that responsibility. And so that's part of it. But I will say, the foundation of our 5 principles, the very first one is, like Tammy said, take care of vulnerability. If you're not doing that, I don't know what you're doing in this world. It's like, take care of your own vulnerability and that of others and of this planet. And then from there, we go into cultivating personhood. What are the ways that we cultivate personhood? By reclaiming a relationship with the body, fostering a sense of the sacred, and regular personal self-inventory. So self-awareness, one of my teachers says, is the like the most lacking skill we have in this country is our own self-awareness. So we make it a priority for ourselves as the adults there, and then also in developmentally appropriate ways for our young people. So cultivating personhood and then building beloved community. We do that through a shared generative purpose. So a shared vision and a shared mission that we're all with, not just the adults. And then cultural ways that help us to celebrate, like Tammy said, and connect, help us to navigate difficulty, because as we get into adolescence and adulthood, it gets a little, as we all know, more complex emotionally and socially. And then also rites of passage. So really celebrating and marking development over the course of a person's time in the community and even beyond. And then finally, it's really learning from the earth. When you commit to a place oriented around vitality and life over a long period of time, you start to see ways, and you remember ways that we are a part of the earth, and we experience the same phenomena that the earth does in our human designs, but that's for later when you've been doing it a while. And then it's all about service, loving and serving. And all of that is supported through an educational design that's very unique, but also ancient, very unique to Springhouse, in that we really know that there's knowledge that we need that help us to build regenerative culture. We have to have opportunities to practice. We have to be fortified, and we have to reflect. Like, those are all that's how our curriculum is developed. So we have a really, we work really, really hard to articulate and develop our framework, because we couldn't share it if we didn't. So it's really important to us, not only to practice it here in Floyd, but not to widely scale it, but more when people come to us, and they do every single week from around the world, and say, what are you all doing? Can we work with you? I mean, just yesterday, there's someone from South Africa in the kitchen at Springhouse. Like, I mean, I'm not kidding. And it's just because it's needed. It's not because we're doing it perfectly, or we're the answer, or we even have the answer. It's more like we're just crazy enough day in, day out to really listen to this place and hold hands together and say, if we want a different culture, education is how we create culture. So education has to be very dramatically different from what we're used to. And Tammy knows, I mean, when you're doing it dramatically differently, you are going to experience resistance, you're going to experience challenges, and you really need those principles, especially beloved community, and a sense of the sacred in one's life. So that's what we're up to.
I feel like that's something that I hear from both of us, that both of our schools have this real dedication to our mission, vision, and values, and we revisit that all the time as a teaching and learning community. And that really does help us stay authentic to who we are, and also informs our growth and our discovery. I think another thing that I hear from Jenny that I feel is a really important part of something that we do, in addition to the mindfulness, in addition to that, like, we have a deep dedication to social emotional learning and being developmentally appropriate. But as an extension of that I think is something that anyone can create for themselves in any learning environment, is that reciprocity of relationship, where we're genuinely in relationship with the children that we're with the families, that we are a community, with the teachers and families are in relationship together, and we're building that community in a way that helps us stay inspired. It helps us be invested in each individual child in a really meaningful way. And how can we only be teaching to standards when we deeply care about this human being that we're with in this moment,
Gosh, yeah, there's so much there in the last two things. I writing down notes. Just amazing. I mean, and the thing that I would ask those who are watching, who are maybe working in a public school setting, the intention of tonight's live stream and the work that I'm going to be doing when I go up to Floyd is not to be a critic of public schools in terms of the people in the buildings trying to make it happen. It's not really about the teachers are doing anything wrong. It's really a systemic problem. It's a systemic issue that in the way schools are designed, in the way the metrics of success and how those metrics define what happens in the school day in ways that are antithetical to, I think, what you're doing, which is saying we're going to honor the humanity of the people in the building first, and that's the priority. And it's not that academics and all that aren't important. It's just that if we don't get that right, you get the academics right, but you don't get the human part right. That's a problem. And folks, we have to look at the culture that we're creating. We've got school shootings happening. It seems like every other month. We've got violence in our communities. Like Jenny was saying, people who just lack self-awareness, lack compassion. And it's and then all kinds of physical, mental health issues and social emotional issues. I am just like inspired by everything you're saying. I want to shift gears because there's something that I've noticed. I follow your schools on Facebook, and one of the things that I love about both of your schools is the opportunities for kids to get outside the building. That seems to be a priority for both of your schools. Can you talk about why it's so important for kids to get outside in nature, why it's important for you to get them outside the four walls of your building?
I can, yeah, and I want to just share something. Tammy and myself and Lori, who is also administrator there, would have these monthly meetings. Last year, we would just meet to connect. And one time we were outside sitting in one of their outdoor classrooms, which was absolutely precious. It is, if you want to be inspired, go to Blue Mountain School and go sit in one of their outdoor classrooms. And so I was out there, and as I was sitting in this really sweet classroom, right through the trees, I could see this very old cemetery. And I find that really profound. I mean, at Springhouse, we do a lot of teaching around death. We did a play last year for the community that we acted out this Appalachian folktale about death. And there was something sitting in that classroom while I'm sitting in this beautiful classroom that I know little people, however olds, are sitting in that area. And then here is this cemetery, the spectrum of life right there. And just being there, just having anyone, myself or a child, sit there and be able to see that and experience that in the woods with these beautiful trees above me was really special. It's something I won't forget. And I mean, it's hard for me to think about, we are the earth. Our bodies will return to the earth. And I think in a death avoidant culture that is all about limitless growth, it's killing us. It's killing the planet. And it's I would say the way that schooling is a cultural problem. It is a cultural problem, and we continue to perpetuate that problem in the ways that we educate. And it's really like, I think Nat, there was someone who made a comment here that said this should be the norm, and it's a travesty that it's not. And I totally agree, Nat, 100%. And that's why I don't want to just have this for Springhouse. We are working to support other people to do this. And so we have outdoor classrooms. All through COVID, like we were in a national research project around this because we were outside a lot and we were creative and resilient, but we were already operating before COVID, like the quote unquote world is on fire. Because I'm from the West. I was living in the West for 20 years and it was on fire and is on fire. So there's a lot of ways it's on fire. COVID just maybe made it more obvious, but I'm not even sure, honestly, sometimes, where I'm like, we're carrying on in a lot of ways that we did even before. And like I said, this really is a cultural issue, and I don't know of a better teacher than the earth. The earth can really show us and teach us about interdependence, about sustainability, about emergence, about the cyclical nature of life, that it's not all about growing, that there is something to say about depth and about darkness, and about death. So that's the reason why the more time I spend out, when I don't spend time outside of my house, the comfort and convenience of my house, I'm not as strong. I'm just not as strong in the world. And so that's really why it's not just our kids. We want to be strong. We want to be strong as adults. We want to live what we hope for in our kids. So that includes being closer to the earth because we're not taking good care of the earth. And we need to, and in order to, we've got to feel connected to the earth in order to value it. So,
Well,
Tammy,
and
what do
I
you
think
have?
those woods are such a metaphor for the cycle of life. You know, when we have our children in the woods, it's all happening. You know, the beginnings and the endings are all going on. That's the life of a forest. And there's so many opportunities to explore those concepts in this really natural way that has ease to it. That allow the children to really kind of dig into those important concepts, even on a 6-year-old level or a 16-year-old level, you know, and they get what they need out of those, out of that rich environment. But I also think it allows that expansiveness of energy. It allows that open exploration because there's that space to grow, but also the comfort of the familiar, because what is truer than our connection to the earth, like Jenny's saying. And so when the kids are in the woods, it really can awaken so many important things. But it also is an environment that supports the children being children. You know, the children moving when they need to move, the children making sounds when they need to make sounds, and that's such an important opportunity. And when we think about developmentally appropriate practice, you know, with our children, what's more developmentally appropriate than giving them opportunities to move, to be big when they need to be big, to explore, and to develop curiosity. You know, that sense of wonder is one of the things that I think both our schools are so committed to. When we are treasuring that sense of wonder and fostering it and nurturing it and allowing that to grow into all the other important learning that starts young and goes big, it often comes from that sense of wonder. And nature brings so much of that for all of us, children and us adults, you know.
Absolutely. And Jenny, on your point about death, when I was there in 2013, there was someone at Blue Mountain School, someone in the school community had lost her husband. And what I saw happening at the school was the students were creating these laminated cards about kindness and love and hanging them on a tree, and it was all in dedication to this person's husband. And I just was like, this is so beautiful. Like, you're taking the time out of your school day to acknowledge something very real that happened, and it's such an incredible learning experience for the kids. And Jenny, you also mentioned something about like how we're kind of fascinated with growth. I'd like you to both to talk a little bit about. I argue a lot about the need for us all to slow down. And in school, it seems like it's the opposite. We keep pushing the curriculum down. We keep speeding it up. We get kids in a hurry, in a rush to meet arbitrary adult benchmarks and goals. We speed kids up, and in my opinion, we're stealing childhood, that very special once in a lifetime stage from kids. And at Blue Mountain, there was a sign. I think it read, "Slow down, free range children." And I love that sign. Talk a little bit about slowing down. Why your advice to educators out there who are caught up in this game of hurry up and get the kids to meet these standards, how that's detrimental to kids, how it's detrimental to teachers or to educators, and how your culture kind of views that at your school.
This is an idea that I've been renewed and exploring with myself. You know, back as a college student learning to be a teacher, I read David L. Kine's book, The Hurried Child. And that was just a pivotal influence for me to really treasure the slowness. And I've lately been even thinking about, you know, Jenny talked about the food culture of Floyd, how we have so much sustainable farming, and thinking about sustainable education. And you know, culturally, we've talked about the slow food movement, and we really are about the slow education movement, I think. And I've been wanting to kind of allow that idea to unfold for myself as I'm exploring it and thinking about it. But I think that is what's sustainable. It does allow that genuine curiosity, not glossing over it to memorize a fact to get ready for the next thing, but that real connection with what the children are doing and the connections that they're drawing between different concepts that allow them to really grow and understand whatever it is that they're talking about, or just themselves or the people around them better. You should talk to Jenny. I just got so excited because that's really something I've been thinking a lot about lately.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Tammy. I think it's not about being slow or being fast. It's maybe about being both and everything in between. But I understand in our culture that, sorry, that's my dog. God bless. Can you stop? Thank you. So, oh my God, our little beagle. So I think for us, it's really more about wholeness at the center. And there's sometimes where if you come in on a Friday afternoon, to Springhouse, you're going to see some raucous dancing. I mean, we start out slow and then we rise to a pinnacle where when people come from the outside and dance with us or watch it, I mean, it's amazing. It's like a living system going through all of its rhythms. So I think that's what's most important to us. But I realize that the dominant cultural educational design is wholly different with a different outcome in mind. And I think for us, we know you cannot hurry development. I don't care how hard you try. We cannot control development. So there is a limit to our human will. I know maybe many people listening to this probably like, yeah, I know, but there might be some that don't think that. And it's like, there really is. You cannot force development. I don't care how much content you shove into someone's face or how many times you test it. The research has shown that kind of stuff. Like, if it's not relevant, we forget it. And so,
or if we rush it, it doesn't happen. It
doesn't happen. And it can be detrimental, because I know at Springhouse, I mean, we just went through a whole summer of really rigorous readmissions process where it was the most rigorous. I mean, we cut our enrollment in half. And it was because I was like, the people in this program need to be developmentally appropriate for this program, because if they're not, then it can be detrimental to a young person who is in this environment, in this educational design that does have a particular end. And it's really about when we leave that we are, like Tammy said, I mean, we are more authentic and whole, and that we know that the world needs us to support and take care of life and grow vitality in ways that are authentic to people in place. So you can't force any of that. It's more about taking care of that in developmentally appropriate ways. And so I think the forcing, and when we get too fast as a staff, we know it and we can feel it. Yeah. And we sit down and we close our eyes and we stop talking and we breathe. And because it can get too much. And we also, through our curriculum, we're really more about depth than we are about a whole bunch of content. So we might choose something like this coming fall, exploring politics and power, political systems and power. And we're looking at the civil rights movement. And so at the end of September, we're all driving down to Birmingham, Alabama. We're going to be there for a week. We're going to meet people. We're going to talk to people. We've already connected with a bunch of community members down there and learn and grow. And so it's not about like how many situations can we fit into the curriculum. It's more like it's okay to just take one phenomena and go deeply with it, because you're going to bump into a whole lot of universal principles, right, rather than having to study 10 different things that now we're overwhelmed and we forget and we don't even have the time to make the connections.
And that's how people authentically learn. I mean, that's how, as an adult, after I got out of school, that's how I learn. I pick a topic and I get into and I geek up about it for 2-3 weeks, learn as much as I can, and then I'm kind of like, okay, I'm ready for a new topic, a new thing to learn.
Right, exactly, right. Well, we need some integration time.
Right.
I liked in your answer, Jenny, you talked about first that acceptance. It doesn't have to be either or, but it's an acceptance. And then that is part of the wholeness that we're all about, is allowing all those layers to come together. And really, again, though, going back to the slow, that because we're allowing ourselves to be absorbed by something, that is the wholeness that happens through all those layers of things that are happening.
Exactly.
Stephanie Schaefer. Is she a teacher at Blue Mountain? Okay, so Stephanie's watching. Hello, Stephanie. Do you remember? She was doing the 4-year-old or the younger kids when I was there. And
she is still that icon of early education in our community. I'm so grateful to have her in my life and in our city.
And so thankful for Nat for tuning in tonight too. Appreciate your comment. So forth. I want to remind everybody that if you're on Facebook, you can type in the comments any kind of comment you have or questions, or just check in with us. We can bring it on like you've been seeing. So Stephanie said, still my jam under 5 crowd. Yeah. Those are special people. When I came out of school, my first group of students, I took maternity leave for a 4-year-old class. That was not my jam. But I absolutely respect people whose jam that is. Stephanie, all respect to you, Stephanie, for what you do. My next question to you is, and Jenny, you alluded to this about, okay, so we're doing these really cool things in Floyd, but this is something that we'd like to see other communities have access to, and maybe they do it in their own way and they modify it and tweak it in ways that work for their community, because we know one size doesn't fit all. But how do we take what you're doing and convince public school leaders and administrators that this is something worth doing when their head is so consumed with test scores, and that's been the paradigm? How do we change that? How do we bring at least some of what you're doing into the public school sphere?
Well, first of all, if you are out there watching and you are interested in learning with other educators or community leaders about an ancient but new way of taking care of life, fostering vitality, then you can go to springhouse.org. Just go there. And when you're on the website, you can look at, there's a page called Cultural Design. Go to Cultural Design. And there you'll see Source Design Lab. And in that lab, we've had probably, 150 people go through it from over 10 different countries. I talked to at least 3 to 5 people, I'm not exaggerating, a week, who want to start something new, both within the public school system and outside, and feel scared and don't know what to do and are overwhelmed. And really, we just need each other. And we offer some steps and also an example. We've made a ton of mistakes. So, I tell the staff all the time, please learn from my mistakes, do it differently. So we're really super open about our mistakes too. So we can learn from each other. I don't know. I spent, Todd and Tammy and everyone before Springhouse, probably, 15 years being more of a consultant, being hired by hospitals, churches, schools, all kinds, criminal justice system, coming in. And it was basically like, our vitality, our life force is pretty low. It's not going well. Can you come in and facilitate like an honest conversation, or sing or dance or tell stories, or all the stuff that I do? I'm like Mary Poppins with my little bag that I come in. And it gave me a lot of practice and a lot of courage. I still cannot believe some of the things I've done. But what happened was I'd go in and then we do something, honest conversation, vitality is sparked. A month later, the executive director, the principal would call me and say, it's gone. It's gone. We're back to our normal thing that we were doing before. And that really taught me a lot, in that when the cultural design itself does not support that taking care of life, the precious gift of life at the center, in whatever way that is, there's a million ways you can do that and more. Then the cultural design, if it supports something wholly different, then it's just like a fire. It just doesn't get tended to. So it doesn't go completely out, but it goes low. So when I came here, I was like, I want a community-based long-term experiment to see what would happen if we designed living, learning, and growing together, education, creating culture, if we designed it in such a way that taking care of this life was number one. And this is super personal to me. I mean, I had cancer in my 20s. I'm the survivor of a lot of different dysfunctions. And I was really lost as a teen. And so I know what it means to every day is a gift. And I've been living that way for 26 years. And I think that it would really be helpful to create structures that remind us of what a gift this life is. And so that's, and I think we need support. We can't do it alone. So it really, like I said, it's not, Springhouse is dear to me and what we're doing there. And it's as dear to me to have conversations and support people who want to do this work wherever they are in the ways that are appropriate and right for them. These principles are vast and deep and ancient. So they're not prescriptive. It's not like we have a how-to answer program. It's more like, here we have some principles that we can orient around, hold hands, and keep walking up this mountain, because we have to, not just for the young people, but for us too. Right?
I think so much
that's what
for
I would
us.
say.
I think one of the things I've been really thinking about lately also is, and I'm thinking about how this can apply to the person who is wherever he or she is right now, wanting more of what we're talking about right now. It can start really small with building a small reflective community of practice. Have those few teachers over, the ones who we know have that spark, that teacher that sees the thing that inspires me and Jenny and you, Todd. We recognize each other. We see that spark in each other. So have them over, or meet somewhere and start that conversation. And from there, continue to connect with each other, continue to meet, to grow. You can have structure to that. You can build things to that, but it'll start to grow within each other. We will be inspiring each other. We do grow that movement, and that can happen in our small schools, in our big schools, in our neighborhoods, and it can get bigger from there. But I think when we find those few people and we continue to support each other, it can make all the difference.
Absolutely.
Right. And Tammy, that's beautiful. And that can give us the support we need to have the courage where you might be in your classroom. Like, I don't know that I would make my endeavor convincing an administrator to change. I've never seen that work. I think more like I'm working with someone right now in Colorado where it's like, start exactly what Tammy just said. Start small. And then that helps you feel supported to bring a courageous, maybe take a risk, and you do something and you start taking care of that community, wherever you are, that classroom. And then sometimes administrators take notice, not always, but sometimes, and wonder like, why is everyone smiling? Or I thought I heard someone
So
singing.
strange. People seem happy.
I know. Well, that's teachers.
I do think that's how change grows.
Me too. I think it's really grassroots. I actually don't think it's top down. And there's a really great, one of my teachers for a long time, her name's Meg Wheatley. And Meg Wheatley and Deborah Freese wrote this book called Walk On, Walk Out. And it's about exactly this, like grassroots movements that start small and make change. It's really a ripple effect. And we talk about that in our model too. But the educational system, I don't think can go on for very much longer as it is. I think it's already kind of deeply faltering. So the people in it, God bless you, and that you continue to do whatever you, like Tammy just said, to just keep that flame going for you and for the kids. I really don't know how much change can be made in the public school sector, like at large. I just, I know I'm thinking about all my public school educator friends that are like, one referred to it as like a slow moving freight train. She was like, I just don't think I'm going to be able to move it. So in her classroom, she was the teacher of my children. And Jessie, if you're out there, I mean, she was the teacher of the year in Colorado, and she was amazing because she did not give up. and she hasn't. She's still teaching. So it is possible.
I do think that's it. I think it starts small in our own classrooms and what we allow to grow from there. And I think it goes back again to that reciprocity of relationship, because in that magical classroom where an administrator may or may not notice the children are smiling, they're still smiling. And we're affecting those people.
That's right.
That's right. And then it continues to grow. It just does.
That's right.
And really the work of the SCEA, I think, at least my work and what I envision it being, is we're trying to get educators to come together to build collective power. And then together they can say, this is the kind of culture we want to build. And we're no longer going to take no for an answer.
Exactly.
Like if an entire school, like if you're at a school, an entire school group of teachers got together and said, you know, we want to change the culture. We realize we can't change it overnight. We're going to have to take steps and so forth. But we need to have the freedom. We need Jenny used the word risk. We need to be able to take risks. We need to have the freedom to fail. It needs to look ugly and messy sometimes because what we're doing isn't working. But we've got to insist as educators to take this profession back, to take the schools back and say, we know there's a misalignment here, that we know that human beings are suffering, which is why educators are leaving the profession, why students seem uninspired a lot of the time. They're dropping out, not graduating. There's mental health issues because we're getting our priorities all mixed up. But if we as educators got together, I believe, and said, first of all, have a vision for where we want to go, because we can't just talk about change and just critique the system. We've got to have something that we can say, because when I went to my administration, I want to change. I can't just say, I don't like this. Better. So be willing to say, here's an example of something we could try. This is a school in Virginia. They're doing this. Can we try this?
Yes. That's exactly what I'm trying to support, is more and more examples of what a design, whether it's the design of a classroom, the design of a teacher sharing circle that takes care of life and fosters vitality. Like, more examples of what is possible are what move change. And I will also say, administrators, like, I know the administrator here in Floyd, Virginia, of the public school, the high school, amazing man. Like, I can only imagine what that would feel like to have everyone being like, I want a different way. I want a way that brings us all alive. I mean, he's already doing that in little by little relationship. I could imagine for some administrators that, frankly, it would be a relief. It would be like, okay, now we have a whole team. We're all on board here, because when I see this administrator, like the way he holds a kid on the, field when he's crying, or, I just got an email yesterday from this principal that said, I miss seeing your daughter's face here. My daughter went to school there because she doesn't want to go to school with her mom. God bless, I get it. But he said, I miss your daughter. I miss your daughter's face, her smiling face. So it's not like administrators, I know that sometimes it might feel like that. I'm not in a public school, but where it's like educators and administrators. But when I look in, I do know administrators, superintendents even, who really are like, what do we do here? This is a problem. A lot of us see the problem, and a lot of us dream about something new. And I think what we're trying one day at a time at Springhouse to do is actually like meet at the intersection of those, the problem and the dream, which I think is experimentation. And I think it's taking a huge risk. And really, people in the beginning, we were at a conference like 9 years ago in Washington, D.C., and people were like, you guys are crazy. In rural Appalachia, a private independent school, it will never work. And we're going into our 9th year, and I'm not going to say, I take it 1 year at a time, but it is a risk. I get it. Whether you're in the public school or you're sitting out there going, I want to start something new. It is not easy. It's not easy.
Absolutely. Experimentation is not easy. It's much easier to take something that's templated or something that already exists and stay within structures. It might be in a way easier, or less a sense of vulnerability, a sense of feeling like, well, if I screw up, then they're good. So and so is going to come down on me. Parents are going to come down on me. But I think we've got to we've got to figure out a way to have the courage to overcome the fear of failure. Because I would experiment all the time in my classroom, and a lot of days it looked terrible. It looked ugly. If somebody came in and did an evaluation, it would be awful because I was trying something new and it just wasn't working. But that's where you learn, okay, that doesn't work. But then the next thing, I'm learning what doesn't work because I want to get to the next iteration, because I do want to get better as an educator. I want the classroom culture and everything to continually look at, how do we improve things? How do we make the experience better for young people? Something that they enjoy, something they're inspired by. Tammy, did you have thoughts about that?
Well, I was just thinking it so much. An important part of that is to look at it with that lens of growth and where do we want to go, rather than this is what's wrong, and focusing on the negative. I noticed when you said that can, what the growth is going to come from the inspiration of looking at where we want to go and celebrating the things we're getting right, and recognizing that it's going to get a little messy on that journey sometimes, and somehow creating an environment that allows for that to be okay.
Right.
And how can we do that? I mean, I certainly know how we do it at my school, but thinking about it in terms of the bigger picture, in terms of so many other educators who are following their inspiration, how do we continue to support that growth for them? What kind of small steps can we take in a classroom that's a more typical classroom that allows for teachers to do that? I'm thinking about that, like ideas for how we can create that atmosphere for each other professionally in the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We are coming up at 8:00. I want to give you one last opportunity to talk about anything we haven't talked about yet, or one comment that you want to make before we sign off. Like, is there something we haven't talked about yet that you want to talk about in terms of your school, your community? Just one final thought to share with us.
I think, I'm like, okay, thinking through the list of things, and I'm thinking about, of course, our commitment to outdoor education, and how, we've been fostering this nature-based education for over 40 years. But I come back to our mission, and that's to honor the whole child. And I think from there is that place of acceptance that Jenny was talking about, and that we were all celebrating, is that acceptance of what is part of allowing it to grow stronger and stronger. And so that includes the hard parts that we just talked about what's happening in the classroom, but really looking at that with that lens of wholeness and acceptance. And from there, growth really does happen. Mm-hmm. And I think that happens on the small scale, one child at a time, and it happens in the big movement of education.
Mm-hmm.
Jenny?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thanks, Tammy. And thanks for having us, Todd, and for elevating this kind of a thing. I want to say one quick thing, and then I want to finish us out with a poem. It's a poem I read all the time. It's from Terry Tempest Williams. But if you want to know about economically how we do this kind of thing at Springhouse, you can go on our website, and it says Generative Economic Model, and it will tell you all about the thought and intention we put into the economics of this kind of thing, which is a whole other thing. When you start, kind of mixing up education and what it means and what it is, it starts getting into other cultural systems like the economic one.
100%.
Okay, here we go. This is from Terry Tempest Williams. And hold on one second. Everyone has a good opportunity to breathe here. This poem is worth it. Okay, here we go. It's called, what is it called? I don't know what it's called, but here we go. The eyes of the future are looking back at us, and they are praying for us to see beyond our own time. They are kneeling with hands clasped, that we might act with restraint, that we might leave room for the life that is destined to come. To protect what is wild is to protect what is gentle. Perhaps the wilderness we fear is the pause between our own heartbeats, the silent space that says we live only by grace. Wilderness lives by this same grace. Wild mercy is in our hands. Wild mercy is in our hands, and it is our responsibility, especially as the adults in this culture, to lead the cultural regeneration that is needed at this time. It's not something that we can lay on our kids. We have to take this up and live the way that we hope for our children. It starts with us, and that's hard work, but it is our responsibility. And Tammy, bless you, and bless Blue Mountain School and everything you all have done for 40 years to pave the way. And Todd, for what you're doing within the system, and anyone watching, if there's any way that we can support you at Springhouse, we'll do our best.
Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to my visit in October. I'll be in touch with you as we get closer to that date, and really excited about coming back to Floyd. I've been there for Floyd Fest, but I want to come back and feel like I'm a part of that community, not just there for a cool concert. I'm gonna close this out, and if you guys will hang on, I'll come right back after I close out everything. I just want to chat with you for a minute before we sign off. Thanks so much.
Thanks everybody.
Todd, thanks everyone.
Thank you, Tammy. Thank you, Tammy and Jenny. All right, that is Tammy Sarver from Blue Mountain School. You can learn more about Blue Mountain School, bluemountain.school.net. And it was Jenny Finn from Springhouse Community School. You can learn more about that school at springhouse.org. A couple of reminders. You can always visit our website, the CEWL website, at cool.us, at CEWL.us. We'd love for you to connect with you. If you are not a member, we'd love to connect with you. The SCEA.org/connect. Just check out that form, and we'll connect with you. And we want to remind everybody, and thanks to Keneal for the reminder, that we need everybody to get out there and vote, because if we want to create the kind of schools that educators deserve and students deserve, we've got to have the right kind of leaders. And I'll be voting for Lisa Ellis, and the SCEA has officially endorsed Lisa Ellis. You can't really see my shirt. Let me see there we go. Maybe you can see my shirt now. Hopefully you will go to her website, lisa4sc.com, and you will check out our website at the scea.org/votes. Please make sure, if you're not registered to vote, to register. Please ask the educators in your building. Just say, have you registered to vote yet? Are you planning on voting in the upcoming election? Make sure and talk to your folks in the cafeteria, the bus drivers, the custodial staff. Talk to your community about the importance of getting out there and getting registered to vote. Really, really important, a critical election here in just coming up in a couple of months. It's already the end of August. Can you believe it? Coming up, we have, let me pull this banner down so you can see this better. So coming up, we have on September 6th, next Tuesday, Stephanie, I'm not sure how to say her last name, Machacek. She's going to be talking about nutrition for teachers, stress eating, and the best food options to support health. And then many of you know Jed Derryberry. He's going to be with us next Thursday, September 8th, doing a session on the power of the doodle. I'm really looking forward to that. And again, just a reminder, Lisa Ellis, you can go to lisa4sc.com. You can find her on social media at lisa4sc. So that's about it. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Let me see any comments we have here. Stephanie, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I look forward. Hopefully I get to see you when I come up to Floyd. Nat, thanks so much for tuning in and for your comments and for really engaging. Eric, thank you. Thank you for tuning in tonight. Really appreciate it. And Keneal, thank you for tuning in and for all the work that you do for the SCEA and for educators here in our state. Again, thanks so much to Tammy Sarver from Blue Mountain, Jenny Finn from Springhouse Community School, and be on the lookout for some really cool content coming up later this fall, maybe winter, and you're going to learn a lot more about those schools. So thank you so much and for tuning in, and we will see you next Tuesday at 6. Take care.